Good morning, everyone. Today we're going to be working on kind of getting into those arm spirals, hip spirals. I'm going to work a new position for kind of hip mobility, spinal mobility. Also has a little bit of core involvement as well. So first time going through that, so see how that one feels. Probably will add to it as we go. All right. Let's get started. We're going to start in the standing position, getting into our crocodile breath. So I want to make our nice big C shapes with our hands, placing the hands below the rib cage, above the hip bone in that nice meaty section of the abdominal wall. Index fingers are wrapping around to the front so that we can feel a little bit of the belly musculature. Thumbs are wrapping around the back to feel a little bit of that low back musculature, and then palms are pressing into the side body to feel that side body abdominal musculature. We're going to take nice big inhale breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth. And as we inhale, I want to imagine that we're trying to inflate or fill up that abdominal wall like it is a balloon. Feeling that press forward into the index fingers, back into the thumbs, and out through the sides into the palms of the hands. As we exhale, we're drawing that navel in and we're lightly clenching down the hands in order to create more resistance so that we can feel the inflation of that abdominal wall like a balloon. We'll get a good 5 up to 10 slow breaths. So slow breaths can be 3 to 5 second inhale, 3 to 5 second exhale. We can even move it up to like 3 to 8 second, depending on where you feel comfortable with it. As you get into this breath, notice shoulders and neck on your inhale. If you feel tension in the shoulders and neck on the exhale, allow those shoulders to soften. Allow your neck to relax a little bit. Feel that tension kind of relax through the shoulders like they're rinsing off the body onto the floor. If we have any tension, it's going to be in that inhale as we expand out through the abdominal wall. And on our exhale, as we feel that navel draw up and into the spine. And as you're feeling this breath, notice where does that breath move well compared to where does it not move it as well. Most people it's going to move well into the belly, but it might not move as well out through the sides or into that low back. More importantly, you may feel it moves well on one side of the body and not so much on the other side. So we can split the body by the spine. You might find that, oh, I can breathe okay on that right side, but my left side doesn't move much. And that's going to be something important that we want to work on with our breath at a neurological level, seeing if we can start to get more movement into that space. We'll go ahead and relax the arms. We're going to continue with that breath, but we're going to get into some bowls of soup. So going to open up the hands, really spreading them out as wide as possible, extending the elbows out actively as much as you can. And we're going to start with facing both palms up towards the ceiling. And we're going to work one side at a time. So I'm keeping that hand spread, elbow extended, spiraling the long arm bone all the way up to the shoulder socket, seeing how far can you spiral that palm down towards the floor, internally rotating. We'll spiral it back up to the ceiling, and then same thing on the other side. I'm exhaling as I spiral my arm internal. Inhale as we spiral it up. And as I spiral up, I'm also seeing how far can I continue to spiral, as if I'm trying to turn that palm all the way back to the back wall. As I internally rotate through the other side, we're going to start to move them more at the same time. So as my right arm spirals in, my left arm is spiraling up and away. And as we're getting into these, I kind of started with the arms low. We can start to raise them higher and higher as long as we don't start getting any kind of pinch or pain in the shoulders. We can play with how the angle that our arms and shoulders are at with this movement. Notice how does that right shoulder spiral in and out compared to the left shoulder. Does one shoulder feel a little clicky, more crepitous? Does it have a little clunk to it compared to the other side? If you do have those kind of feelings, that generally means that that shoulder is more compressed, which is why I want to work on really reaching out in a way, trying to get as much length and spread as we spiral. That helps to stretch the fascia, which helps to move that joint out of compression. All right, we're now going to come all the way down to the floor, getting into our V-sit. We're basically going to do the same type of action through the hips. So nice spread legs, hands coming down to the floor behind the hips, grounding those palms firmly, spiral the elbows out and away so that we feel the chest open up, lifting the sternum up to the ceiling. So I want to avoid being rounded shoulders here. I want to spiral elbows out and feel how that packs the shoulders down, lifts the chest, and we might even get some stretch across the front of the chest. We're going to maintain that position of the upper body, and we're focusing on the legs. Pull the feet back like you're trying to touch the top of your toes to your shin, actively reaching the knees down to the floor. And we're spiraling both legs at the same time. We're trying to reach those knees out like you're trying to touch the floor on the outside of the legs. And then we're spiraling them in as if you're trying to touch the inside of the floor with the kneecaps. I want to inhale as we're coming to center. Exhale as we rotate away. Inhale as you come to center. And exhale as you rotate inward. And take a look at your kneecaps on both knees. How far do they both rotate out? How far do they both rotate in? Is one side more limited in its range of motion? Does it not go as far? And just like with the shoulder, is one side more clicky? Does it have a little crepitus to it? Does it feel a little grindy? Again, that can be an indication of some compression within the hip. Now, as we're getting into these, I want to start to bring it down to our ankles, and we'll get a little ankle flossing. So as we spiral out and away, we're going to then point the toes as we spiral in, and then we're going to pull those toes back actively as we spiral back out and away. I want to make sure that, pay attention. I want to watch out for any kind of Charlie horse or spasm in the arch of the foot. So if you feel that way, stay kind of light with how much you flex or extend the toes. If you feel pretty good at the arches of the feet, as you rotate out and point, you can flex the toes as you bring them back in. As you pull back, see how much can you spread the toes out wide like you're spreading your hands. We'll do 5 nice big circles in one direction. And then we're going to reverse directions and do the same thing. Turning them in, nice flex as we point, rotate out, nice spread as we pull them back in. This is a good place to notice any kind of tightness or tension differences at the ankle joint, even down into the foot. Does one side feel tighter and more restricted as you're going through that circle compared to the other? How does that relate to what you're feeling up into the hip? If you have a hip that is tight and compressed, a little grindy, a little clicky, you're probably going to notice that that same ankle is also tight. So that compression is moving all the way from the foot up into that hip, into the torso of the body. So compression, that's where we're getting that compression in the hip, is also going to be at the ankles and the knees, and we're really within the foot. All right, so we're now going to switch our position. Coming up to knees, we're going to get into our frog. In frog, I'm nice on grounded palms, extended elbows. Knees are turning out. Feet are staying relatively closer together. And we're going to see how, want to go as wide as we comfortably can without pain in the hips. Our inhale, we're rocking a little bit forward. Our exhale, we're allowing those hips to sink back between the heels. Inhale brings us back forward. As you sit back, imagine you have a tail and you're trying to turn that tail up to the ceiling. So you're kind of turning your tailbone upward as you sink into the hips. Inhale brings us back forward. Notice, how does this feel on the inside of the right hip compared to the left hip? Is one hip a little tighter than the other hip? If this is pretty good and you feel like you can get a little deeper into it, we can drop down to our elbows, doing the same thing. As I slide back, I'm still turning that tailbone lightly up to the ceiling. Inhale as we come forward. You might notice that as it loosens up, you're able to spread the knees a little bit wider. As long as it's not painful or stressful, that's fine. Once we get a good 5 to 10, I'm going to bring it back up to hands. We're going to sink hips to heels to get into really light tension. We're not going all the way into the depths of it. And from here, we're going to do some ankle raises. So we're going to lift one ankle lightly up towards the ceiling, drop it down, and then same thing on the other side. I'm inhaling as I let that ankle to the floor. Exhale as I lift the next ankle up. Go slow on this. Notice how smooth is it on the right hip compared to the left hip. How high are you able to lift your right ankle compared to your left ankle? Does one side have more range of motion compared to the other? We'll come out of that position. We're now going to shift into our shin box. I'm starting in left side shin box. Left palm is down. Want to be sitting on that left side of the hip. So most of my weight is on left side. Palm is on the floor grounded. Spiraling out that elbow. Nice packed shoulder. Tall chest. Again, I don't want to be rounded in my shoulder here. I want to have a nice externally rotated shoulder. Packed shoulder blade. I want to make sure that this front knee stays towards the floor. I don't want it lifting up. If it's lifting up, that means our weight is shifting into our back hip. We're going to focus on that back knee first, doing just some light hip mobility, opposite of what we just did in our frog. So I'm lifting that knee up towards the ceiling as I exhale. Inhale as I let it kiss the floor. With each one, just lightly squeezing into it, seeing if I can get a little bit more range. Still breathing into our crocodile breath, feeling that expansion through the abdominal wall on the inhale. Exhale, feel that navel draw into the spine. Once we get to 5, we can switch to the other side. Grounded palm, spiraled elbow. Again, weight is shifted to that side, focusing on that back hip. Exhale as we lift. Inhale as we bring that knee back to the floor. Notice how high are you able to go with this knee compared to the other knee. How tight does it feel in that hip? Especially if it was that same hip that was a little bit more, clunky, grindy feeling in some of our other movements. Are you feeling that a little bit more tension in that hip in this movement as well? These movements will help to decompress that hip, get some space in there, allow things to move a little bit better. As long as we are doing it non-painfully, we're staying below level 3 on a scale of 0 to 10, 1 and 2 being slight discomfort, not active pain. Switching back to our first side, packed shoulder, spiraled elbow, weight is still shifted to that front leg. We're now going to focus on this back hip. I want to reach that hip towards the floor like I'm trying to drop it down, but I want to do so without shifting weight to where that opposite knee comes off the floor. So I'm reaching through that hip. You may feel some mobility stretch within that hip. On our exhale, we're lifting that hip up, reaching it forward as we scoop. There's a very small movement. I don't want to move a whole lot through the upper body. Inhale as we let that hip reach to the floor. Exhale, reaching forward with a scoop. If we're keeping it isolated within this joint, we should feel a mild stretch through the front of the hip. We should feel some contraction in the glute based on being in full hip extension. My glute's not contracting because I'm squeezing it with my thoughts. I'm not trying to make it contract. I'm moving my hip bone forward and scooping, and by doing that, it contracts on its own. After 5, we're going to bring it across to the other side and do the same thing. Grounded palm, spiraled elbow, packed shoulder. Inhale, reaching that back hip to the floor. Exhale, lift, reach that hip forward and scoop. Feel that light stretch to the front. See if you can start to feel that contraction in the rear. Whichever hip was the more clunky, tight, compressed hip is going to feel, it's going to be harder to get that full extension. It's going to be harder to feel that glute activation. You might feel a bigger stretch through the front of the hip, or you just might feel it's so tight that you can't even get to the stretch. If that's the case, then this is a movement that I would recommend doing more throughout the day. 5 reps at a time, 3 to 5 times throughout the day. See if you can start getting more mobility into that hip actively. Once we get 5 on that side, moving back across to the other side, we're doing the exact same thing with that back hip. Letting it drop, lifting it up, exhale as we scoop, and now we're going to add our reach with rotation. So I want to lock that back hip in. That movement is still small and isolated and the same. Once it's locked, then we're seeing how far can we get our fingertips to reach away. Inhale, we're bringing that arm all the way in, allowing that hip all the way back to the floor. Exhale, scoop, lock that back hip in first. Get that glute active and try to maintain that active glute as you reach and send those fingers as far away as you can. With each one, I'm seeing if we can get a little bit more locked into that hip. Can we get more activation in that glute? And then can I reach a little further without losing that locked in glute? And then we'll switch to the other side. Doing the exact same thing. Again, grounded palm, spiraled elbow, packed shoulder, tall chest. Inhale, that back hip reaches to the floor. Exhale, scoop, lock it in, feel that glute contraction, and then we're reaching away through those fingertips. Inhale brings it all the way back in, reaching the hip to the floor. Exhale, find that locked in glute. Keep that glute locked. Feel it actively firing as you reach away. Don't let your reach away turn that glute off to where you can't feel it anymore. That means you've probably lost your hip position. I want to feel that scooped active hip that locks that glute in, and I want to maintain that as we reach. Not only do I want to maintain it, I want to continue to actively move into it as I reach. That should draw more stretch from that hip up into the spine, getting into some rotation. Now, notice whatever hip was tighter in everything else so far is probably going to show up here as well. It's going to be tight in that hip. It's also probably going to mean that you're a little tighter or you have less rotation available going away from that hip compared to the other side. We'll bring it back across, and now we're going to get into our folds, and we're just going to take our folds going side to side. So I'm not worried about shin angle, knee angle. I just want to get into a nice, comfortable, both hands reaching evenly through one side. Inhale, we're bringing it all the way back up to the center, and then we're moving to the other side to do the same thing. Nice, even reach. Inhale as we bring it back. And as we're going back and forth, this is where I really want to key in on how does it feel the same on the left side and the right side. And more importantly, how does it feel different? Where does it feel tighter and more restricted? Do you feel it in that back hip that was tight and all the other things when that hip is in the back and you get into your fold? Do you feel it in the front or the back of the front hip, the glute of that opposite side leg? Whatever hip was tight, it's quite possible that the opposite side glute is also tight in relationship. How is that different from when you go to the other side? Does the other side just feel completely free or more free than the side that's been tight? As we're going back and forth, we're going to start to open up that back knee, making our shin box a little bit bigger, continuing to get into our fold, bringing it back as we go across, and then opening up that back knee to the same position on this side as well. Now, if you have tightness in that hip due to compression, it's probably been compressed for a long time, so it's unlikely that it's going to come out of that compression from just one movement session or a handful of movement sessions. It will probably take a while to really get some change in that hip if it's been stuck for a long time. So diligence will matter. Consistency, remaining consistent, doing movements not just every day but throughout the day will make a huge difference in how fast we can get those areas to change. As we're opening up that back knee, we're going to keep sliding it more and more open until we get closer to what we would consider a yoga class pigeon pose. And as we're changing each of these positions, I still want to continue to notice how is it different on the left side compared to the right side. Because those areas in which it feels different means that there is less mobility available on one side than the other. And where there is less mobility available, those are the areas in which my movement is stuck. And the only way I'm going to get better at them is to work on them, is to get into those areas and see if I can slowly start to rebuild those patterns, the ability to control it. Can I get in and out of them? It will take time. All right. We're now going to shift into our inverted sit position. So knees are bent, feet in front, hands are coming down slightly behind the hips, grounded palms. And we're going to come back to our arm spirals from this position, kind of thinking bowls of soup, except the hands are grounded to the floor. So your hands aren't going to slide, but we're working these long arm bones, rotating the elbows, elbow pits out and away. Notice how that opens up the chest, lifting the sternum up to the ceiling. And then we'll spiral those elbow pits internal. Notice how that rounds the shoulders. We get a little bit rounded in our upper back. As we spiral out, I want to inhale. Feel that inhale move up into the chest as we lightly press down into the floor through the palms. On the exhale, we're drawing our navel into the spine and we're letting the pelvis scoop as we round those shoulders. See if you can feel some nice stretch across the upper back, down into the lower back. On the inhale, as we spiral out, pressing down, see if you can feel that stretch across the chest. Exhale, can you feel that stretch across the upper, down into the lower back? On the next inhale, as you spiral elbows out and away, getting nice and tall, we're going to stay tall. And at this point, if you want to cross the legs because it's more comfortable, you're welcome to. But I still want to be grounded through those palms. Elbows are spiraled out. Notice shoulders pack. I don't want shoulders rounded forward. I don't want to be here with this position. I want to feel that nice open chest, spiraled shoulders to the best that you can. And we're pressing into the floor. We're going to do some neck mobility. So nice inhale as we're at the center. Exhale as we look over our shoulder, checking our blind spot. Inhale back to center. Exhale as we look over our left shoulder and check our blind spot. Notice if one side is tighter than the other side. And how does that relate to the tighter hip? Is it on the same side as that tight hip, or is it on the opposite side? Next, we're going to get into our light tilt and lift. So lightly tilting the head like you're dropping an ear towards the shoulder, but I'm only going a little bit. I don't want to drop it all the way. Light drop. Opposite ear is lifting up as if we're trying to touch the ceiling with that ear, or imagine there's a piece of string pulling that ear up. I want to feel that create traction through that side of the neck. Inhale will come to center. Exhale will go to the other side and feel that same lift. Now, as I'm lifting through the ear, I'm also continuing to ground and press down through the shoulders with those elbows spiraled out. So I want to continue to feel that active stretch through the chest. Feel those shoulder blades actively reaching down as you're lifting that ear up. That should add to that traction stretch in the side of the neck. And again, notice, how does this feel different on the right side compared to the left side? Good. Next, we're going to do some shallow neck rolls. Allow the chin to drop down towards the chest. I don't want this to be a super deep neck roll to start with, so stay light. Don't go all the way down to the chest. From here, we're going to let the right ear move towards the right shoulder. Then the eyes can come up to the ceiling, and then left ear to the left shoulder, and then chin back down to chest. And we'll continue that circle for 5 reps, and then we're going to switch directions. As you're getting into it, we're trying to smooth that circle out and slowly allow it to get a little bit deeper, as long as it is not painful. If you are feeling pain, then you need to back off. Don't go so deep. If you cannot move the neck without pain, then you need to stop and schedule a consultation. Once we get 5 circles in one direction, we're going to switch direction and we're going to start shallow again. Chin to chest, left ear to the left shoulder, eyes come up to the ceiling, and then right ear to the right shoulder, and then chin back down to chest. And then from there, we're going to slowly smooth that circle out. And again, notice where is the tension different on the right side compared to the left side. And how does that relate down into the hips, where you felt hip tightness? Maybe you're noticing some shoulder tightness. Maybe you have some history of shoulder, elbow, or wrist issues. How do those relate to what you're feeling into the neck? Is it on the same side? If so, then your neck has a lot to do with what's going on in that shoulder, elbow, and wrist. All right. So now we're going to get in. We're getting into a new position. So we're going to be working from a plank. So if you lack mobility at the wrists, or you have wrist pain or shoulder instability, this might be a movement that you're not ready for. If so, I would recommend scheduling a consultation so that we can talk about what you can do instead. So, bringing hands directly under the shoulders, we are going to lift up into a basic hand plank. I'm not going to be overly concerned with position of the pelvis, position of the shoulders right now. We can work on our plank position as we go. From here, we're going to slowly bring one foot up towards our hand. We're seeing if we can get that foot to the outside of the hand, but you're seeing how far can you go. If you can only get so far, we're seeing if we can bring that foot in. Can you rest the heel or reach the heel to the floor? Then we'll bring that foot back out, and we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Seeing if you can find that foot, can you get it flat to the floor? As you're going back and forth, moving slow. And if you need to take breaks, let the knees drop down, come off the hands, roll the wrists out. We can come back to the plank. You don't need to maintain the plank position the whole time, especially if this is new. As we're bringing that foot up, we're slowly seeing, can we get that foot a little bit higher? Can we bring it up in one movement without walking it up any further? Again, I'm going to go ahead and encourage everybody to take breaks. So I'm going to come down to knees, roll the wrists out. On the next one, as we get into it, we're now going to start working some length through that back leg. So as I'm coming back up to my plank, bringing right foot forward, I'm focusing on my left leg in the back. I want to actively lift the knee up to the ceiling and reach the heel, like I'm trying to root that heel towards the wall behind me. At the same time, my opposite hip, my right side hip, I'm seeing if I can drop it down to the floor at the same time that I'm lifting that knee. We can inhale, let the knee soften, let the hip lift, rise. Exhale, Lift that knee as you feel that hip drop. Notice, where do you feel that stretch? After 3 to 5 breaths, we'll slowly transition to the other side, bringing that foot up, actively lifting the knee to the ceiling, reaching through that heel as we drop that opposite hip. On the exhale, inhale, we can let that knee soften and bend as we lift the opposite hip. Exhale, reach that knee as you drop the hip. After 3 to 5, we're going to bring feet back down. Again, we're going to go ahead and take a little rest. So I'm coming off the knees, off the hands. Make sure that wrists are not getting overly stressed. Next, we're going to go in, we're going to do the exact same thing, but we're going to now apply some rotation through the shoulders. So again, nice spread hands, coming up into our plank. We bring that foot forward. I'm lifting that knee, dropping the hip. And at this point, I got my right foot forward. I'm going to bring my left hand and bring it a little bit more centered under the chest. And I want to keep my opposite hand into my body. I don't want to reach it out for right now. I'm just very slowly going to rotate like I'm lifting that shoulder up to the ceiling. I can also let my eyes follow that shoulder looking up. Inhale, I'm going to bring that shoulder down. Let that knee soften. Let the hip raise. We're going to exhale as we lift that back knee. Drop the hip as we spiral that shoulder up towards the ceiling. We're only rotating as far as we can with control and non-painful. After 3 to 5 reps, switching hands, bringing hands down, switching feet. That outside hand is going to come more center. Inside hand can come across the chest. Actively lifting that knee to the ceiling, dropping the opposite hip, and then seeing how far can we rotate that shoulder up towards the ceiling. Inhale, bringing it back down, letting the knee soften and the hip raise. Exhale, lift the knee, drop the hip, rotate the shoulder. Again, 3 to 5 reps, if you can do this non-painfully. We'll go ahead and bring our hand back to the floor, feet come back to our knees. We're going to roll, let those wrists soften up a little bit. We're going to finish up on the floor on our back. I want to do a little bit of nice soft baby roll. So arms are coming up into a nice big Y position. Legs are going out straight and flat. Knees are flat. I want feet to be about shoulder width apart with the toes facing straight up to the ceiling. And we're going to lightly engage the floor through the heels, pressing down lightly. We're going to take a nice inhale, and on our exhale, we're lifting our head, and we're looking to our fingertips on the right hand, and the left hand is reaching across to match those fingers. Trying to keep both heels grounded to the floor. Inhale, we're bringing that arm back. Exhale, lifting the head, shoulder as we reach across to the other side. Again, both heels are pressed evenly into the floor. Maintain that pressure as you reach and rotate. Notice that your hip has to come off the floor for your hands to meet. So your hips should not be trying to stay on the ground. They're allowed to come up a little bit. And as you're going side to side, notice, is one direction of this, is the reaching with the right hand or the left hand more, is it tighter, more restricted? Is it more challenging? Does it feel more difficult to do? We'll come back to our starting point. Arms are still out at our Y position. Now we're going to lift a leg, and we're going to reach that leg across, but we're going to keep it up high like we're reaching up onto a shelf. We're going to keep reaching so that it pulls the shoulder blade off the floor, but try to maintain some connection to the floor with the back of the hand. Inhale, that leg comes back to the floor. Exhale as we lift and reach through the opposite leg. Again, nice, slow inhale, nice, slow exhale. As we're reaching through those toes, reach away through the fingertips at the same time. See how much can you get that stretch to move from fingertip to toe tip, from one side to the other. How does this feel different? Reaching with the left foot compared to reaching with the right foot. Once we're balanced out, we can bring our feet flat to the floor with the knees bent. We're going to make our big C shapes with our hands, placing the hands below the rib cage, above the hip bone, thumbs in the back, index fingers in the front. And we're coming back to our crocodile or balloon breath. So nice inhale, filling up that abdominal wall. Feel that, press the fingers out and away. On the exhale, drawing navel into spine. Allow the hands to clench down a little bit so that you have more resistance to feel that abdominal wall push out against on the inhale. And just like we did at the beginning with the shoulders, notice any extra tension that goes into the shoulders. On that inhale, on the exhale, let the shoulders relax and drop to the floor. Same thing with the neck and the head. Anywhere where you're feeling tension that is not in that abdominal wall, you can let that tension melt or rinse down to the floor. Just kind of allow it to drop. And let your hands drop down to the side with the palms up. Feel those shoulders kind of soften even more to the floor. Start to bring that breath up into the ribs, into the chest. Allow that breath to move up into the neck, upper shoulders. Kind of breathing into that tension on the inhale and on the exhale. Allow that tension to melt and to rinse away. Like you can breathe right into all that tension and stress. And with your exhale, you can just imagine that stress is just a state of surrender in which it just gets to drop down to the floor. You don't have to pick it back up. You can be with this breath for as long as you need. And when you're ready, you can go ahead and open your eyes, very slowly get back up. I want to make sure that you are not dizzy or lightheaded before you come up to a sit or a standing position.